It is probably worse. You have to see them every day.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to do two, but we're going to start with Joe here because he has to get going. So we'll do Joe first.
Sounds good.
All right, cool. Will you stop that? It sounds like otherworldly. They said some of the were actually from Star Trek.
Yeah.
The guide wires that are on the telephone pole, the guy hit them with it makes a boom, boom.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it is so nice to have you with us once again. I don't know where things are with you in your life, but let me just say to you that if you're out there today and you're feeling a little down, listen, stay tuned. You know, a lot of times we feel we're at the very end of ourselves. Sometimes we feel we're at the bottom of the barrel. Sometimes we think there's nowhere to go from here. And although it may be trite to say, and people have said it for years, but when you're on the bottom, there really is no place to go but up. And if that's the case, you can decide to do one of two things. You can languish at the bottom, on your face, out, or you can decide that you're going to get up and you're going to start over. And the only way to really do that, if you're a non-believer, is to accept the Lord Jesus Christ and let Him change your life. And if you're a believer, then you need to remember the Christ that you promised to serve, the Christ that saved you from death and hell, the Christ who said He would never leave you, never forsake you, always be with you. And you need to stand up, reach your arms out, because God is never afar off. It's not like God is in some other universe that you can't reach. Where God is right there when you're ready to get back on the path that He has set forth for you. If you're suffering right now, if you're depressed, if you're down or you're broken, then you're down or you're broken because you're either a believer who is not following God, not praying, not studying. I know that sounds old-fashioned, doesn't it? And maybe it is. But I got to tell you, it's like diet and exercise. Diet and exercise is the only way to lose weight. They can come up with this diet, that diet, but it always breaks down to diet and exercise. So you can have all the new schemes there are to know about God, to learn about God, but it's always going to break down to you're studying the Word of God and being on your knees praying and being obedient to what the Word says. Because the Bible has told us to be doers of the Word, not simply hearers. Because then you really are deceived. Because you can hear it all day long. That doesn't mean anything. So right now, today, we've got two guests, and we're going to have two different shows. And I've got a friend who is an employee of mine, and more importantly of the missions, who is a believer in Jesus Christ, who has been at the mission for a very long time. And he has decided, I asked him if he would come down and come on the show. He prayed about it and decided he would. So, Joe Flynn, say hello to everybody out there today.
Hello.
All right. Don't get carried away now, Joe.
All right.
All right. Hey, Joe, how long, when did you first come to the mission?
Well, originally I was there in 87.
Mm-hmm.
But as a lot of people, I was a retread. I came back in 93, and I've been there ever since.
What was your drug of choice?
Alcohol.
I guess I should mention the fact that Joseph is not only an employee, but once upon a time was on the program. Once upon a time was, I don't know if he was on the street per se, but he was definitely involved with alcohol and drugs, and it had brought you to a place in your life you just couldn't live with anymore, right?
Correct, yeah.
And so, how did you hear about the mission?
Well, what happened was, I was in Reno, and I got a drunk driving. Then I got another drunk driving within like 2 weeks. So they put me in jail I ended up in there for 11 months. And when I came out, all my stuff was gone. I didn't know what to do. And I'd never been like homeless or anything, but
Right.
I was then. And it was winter time, and I didn't know what to do. So what I thought I'd do is I went into one of the casinos, the restaurant, and I ate, and I thought I could get arrested, and then I would straighten things out, call people, and once I was in jail. But once they found out, the police wouldn't take me. So they said, well, you just go over to the mission. And there's a mission in Reno. Well, I couldn't find it that night, but it's only about 2 blocks from it, but I never did find it. But I ended up going there, and that's where I actually got saved, after I was there for a month or two. And so I was raised Catholic, so I was kind of saved in my mind, but I was definitely saved then. So then I knew about missions.
Right.
And I had a friend at the mission there, and he wanted to go to Sacramento, so we went to Sacramento. And then, well, anyway, we got kicked out of the mission. So we went back, we went to Las Vegas, and then I went back to Reno, and I was working at the Salvation Army. But I'd always remembered the mission in Sacramento was the best place I'd been. So I left there and came back here in '93.
Yeah, which just goes to show that, whether you were saved as a kid or as an adult, you gave your heart to Christ and you probably were sincere when you did that. It doesn't mean that your struggles are over, does it?
No. Unless you change and let God work on you, it doesn't change you much.
Yeah, because the whole part about it, we're coming up very shortly to the Easter season, the Resurrection Sunday. And one of the things that's very important for people to understand that you can't just kneel down at Christmas time to the babe in the manger and forget about the man on the cross. When you come to Jesus Christ, you just don't come and say, I'm going to add Christ to my life. It's not, Jesus Christ is not a lucky rabbit's foot. He's not something you add to your other religions. What he is he's the Lord and he's the Savior. And, the Bible tells us you'll have no other gods before me. And that includes not only foreign gods that we think about, but other gods like alcohol, right?
Correct, yeah.
And so you were drinking again, right?
Right, I never really stopped.
Right.
Until I got to the mission in '93.
Okay.
I never really stopped.
So, and by retread, by the way, what Joe meant was that a lot of times we get guys that come onto the program, and sometimes they even go through the program and graduate the program, and you think that everything's okay. And in reality, they fall back into their old ways, they start doing things, and sometimes it takes a couple of times before it actually catches, right?
Correct.
You're
me.
Yeah. Well, you're good friends with Myron, and it took Myron several times
Right. He was there when I first got there, the first time, and then, he was there. He's been there a few times.
So tell me now that it's 1993, you've remembered the mission, you've come back, you're, as you put it, a retread.
Mm-hmm.
You come back on the mission and you're going to go through the program. Don Kirk is director at the time, right?
Correct.
And so it was a 1-year program at the time?
I think it was a 90-day program.
90-day program. And that sometimes can be a problem.
Right, but they let you, they didn't kick you out right then.
All right, so you went through, you graduated the program, right?
Right.
Okay. And after that point, did you ever drink again?
No.
Okay. So now it's 90 days later, and you're clean and sober, but you got nowhere to go exactly.
Well,
right?
it was kind of since I had been there before, And they knew me because I was there for like 2 years before I got kicked out.
Yeah.
And they started up they bought they got donated, I think, a church
Right.
over on Lincoln Village in Lincoln Village. So they sent some guys out there, and I was one of them. So this was like in my first month there. So we got sent out there and kind of fixed it up, painted it, worked on it, so they could sell it, because they tried running it a little bit, it didn't work out too good. But I was there for a while, and then they needed a driver. At the time, he wasn't an employee or anything, but they needed a driver, so they asked me to be the driver, and I was still out there, so I was kind of taking care of that place out there and driving. So that's, and then I just switched jobs a few times, and now I'm here.
Well, it probably wasn't quite that simple. Joe did do several other jobs, and then he became our night guy who works from 11 to 7 in the morning. And so, isn't that right, Joe?
Correct,
That's right. Now, Joe, amongst the things he does, when you think about a guy who's working from 11 to 7 in a mission, there's probably the guys are in bed and everything. But there are still occasions that he's going to have to counsel with somebody who's upset. He's got to keep an eye on everything. He's got to go around the mission. And one of the hard parts is that, you come into the mission and you might get to know during the day all the staff that are there. You might even get to know who's there in the early evening. But it's doubtful, if you're the public, that you ever get to see Joe Flynn. And so, although it may not always seem like you're in ministry, you realize you are, right?
Oh, yeah.
So tell me, how old were you when you started drinking?
Oh, I'm around 16.
Okay.
Not
How long
easily, but
until how long until it became a real problem?
probably when I hit about 20.
About 20 years old.
Yeah.
One of the things that Joe and I were talking about before the program started was, so often people think that you have to come from a dysfunctional family, you have to come from a family that's broken. If you're going to have alcohol or you're going to have drug problems, you probably were with people that had alcohol and drug problems, all those kind of things. And maybe it wasn't a great family. But Joe didn't come from a dysfunctional family. He didn't come from he came from a typical middle class type family, right?
Right.
What was it before your mom had kids, she was a teacher, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay, and your dad was?
Well, he was a business guy, but he was running a distributorship for air conditioning and heating.
I don't know if all of you know this, but for many years, I owned an air conditioning company before I was called into the ministry, and so I had the opportunity to deal with a lot of those distributors that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And so you're talking about a middle class family, but where do you suppose things started to go left on you? Was it just that you wanted to rebel? Was it your friends that you were around? What do you suppose was the reason that you just started drinking?
I enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm. That's straightforward.
Yeah, I just was having a good time.
Mm-hmm.
And,
But the good time doesn't last, does it?
no, not after a while. Not when you have a job and stuff. It doesn't work out too good.
You lose jobs because of alcohol?
Yeah.
How about your family? Were they still alive at the time?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, I had problems with them too.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's inevitable. What some folks don't really realize is, and I'm not saying Joe had this problem, but most of the time if a person gets involved with drugs and alcohol, they will systematically sabotage every relationship they have. First, it's by being around everybody when they're intoxicated, when they're on the drugs. Then it's borrowing money from them, trying to sleep on their couch, all those kind of things, and it's a downward spiral. Many people get to the point where they use and abuse their families, and they ruin the trust that their moms and their dads or sisters and brothers have for them. And that's not something you can just repair overnight, is it, Joe?
No.
Because, we've all gotten to that point where I'll never do that again, and then what's the first thing we do?
I have to do it again.
Exactly. And so people hear, we're never going to do it again so many times, they just don't want to believe it. Well, they want to, but they just can't.
Yeah,
Right?
because there's no proof of it.
Right. Now, were your mom and dad still alive when you finally found sobriety?
Right, yes, they were.
And that must have been a good day for them.
Yeah, I was out of touch with them for like 10 years
Wow.
because of the alcohol, and I'd lost my ID, and I lost all phone numbers, and I wasn't doing real good with some of it. But when I did get a hold of them, well, they were glad to hear from me.
Of course.
We worked it out now. It was real good.
Yeah.
And I got back with my sisters and stuff. So
And your sisters are still with us. And everything.
yeah,
Mom and dad have gone home.
yeah,
Okay. But you know what? The important thing is that, and one thing that we need to realize too is that Joe, when you look at Joe, you would never guess that he was an alcoholic. You'd never guess that he had a problem. You'd look at him and think he'd probably always been in the church. He's neat and clean and well dressed and looks like a middle class guy that you would find anywhere. He could be a teacher. He could be a lawyer, a doctor. Well, maybe not a pastor. We're kind of we're a little ragged, but no. He could be a pastor, he could be anybody, and certainly not somebody that you would look at and say, this guy once had a problem. But see, that's what we fail to see sometimes out there, is that folks are looking for a stereotype. The falling down drunk who, he looks like he's an alcoholic, and that person looks like a doper. Not always the case, is it?
no, and a lot that don't look like it are.
You bet.
That are walking around,
You
holding
bet.
jobs and stuff.
That's absolutely true. So tell me something. When you finally hit the bottom of the barrel, you came to the mission, you had already accepted Jesus Christ. So how pivotal was the teaching that you received there at the time?
Oh, that was because I got saved, but I really didn't understand all the things. But I did really get saved. I could feel that.
Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't really knowledgeable in the Bible because Catholics aren't really into the Bible. At least they weren't back then.
Well, let's rephrase that. There's some Catholics
well,
that
yeah,
aren't.
yeah. There's some that aren't because they have catechisms and they have little extras.
Yeah.
They
Well,
kind of throw off the main thing.
Well, I think that one of the things is that sometimes we, and as children too, if we're raised in a church, I was raised at a different denomination than what I'm a pastor in, but still a Protestant denomination, and I didn't get it either.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that one of the things is, whether it's Catholic, whether it's Protestant, a lot of times what we do is we're not always hearing what they're saying. I have a friend who's a physician, and I think I've talked to you guys about him on the air before. He's a wonderful guy. He's undergoing cancer therapy right now, and unfortunately I haven't talked to him for a few weeks, but he's also Catholic and absolutely loves the Lord. He's always in the Bible. So,
Right.
But as far as coming to the mission and you're getting involved with the teaching there, and maybe for the first time you're really hearing it, and can you remember a pivotal moment when you really realized you were never going to drink again?
Not really, because for a while I always had it in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
But I had done it. I had quit going through programs and stuff.
Right.
But I always seemed to return to it.
Yeah.
So it took me, I'd say, 3 or 4 years before I really knew it for sure. It wasn't really a flash, because I quit smoking at the same time I came in.
You almost have to, huh?
Yeah, because
And we require it now.
now, but back then it was all right. But I couldn't keep everybody up in cigarettes, so I figured it's just better to quit.
Yeah.
Because you get a lot of friends.
Yeah, you do get a lot of friends. Well, I think one of the reasons, people will ask, well, okay, I understand that you want them off the drugs and alcohol and all those kind of things, but why is it that you won't let them smoke? Well, I think one of the reasons that we don't, well, I know the reason that I believe we shouldn't, is I believe that you hide your addiction in the other addiction. So you're not drinking, so you're smoking extra. Or you're not taking drugs, now you're smoking cigarettes. But I think that makes it easier for you to transition back into drinking. Plus the fact, I don't know about you, but when I was young and I used to drink and I smoked at the same time, it seems like you would smoke 3 times as much, and every
Oh.
time you smoke, you think about when you were drinking and stuff.
Right.
And so we don't allow the guys to smoke, and I have absolutely zero intention of ever reinstituting that at the mission.
Well, that's the best thing. I mean, I'm glad I quit. I mean, it was expensive then, but now it's really expensive, and it's not good for you.
Well, no, and it isn't good for you. And besides, we have an old mission. I don't want a bunch of people walking around with cigarettes in their
Right.
hands. Besides that, you know, Don Kirk used to say, and this may be a kind of an old-fashioned saying, but I like it. He used to say, listen, folks, if you're a Christian, smoking won't send you to hell, but it'll make you smell like you've been.
Yeah.
So you know what? Anything that separates us, I don't think is good for us. Whether it's smoking or whether it's drinking, whatever it is that separates us, and sometimes even healthy things can separate us from God. You know, years ago, I used to really overdo the exercise thing. Lifted a lot of weights, did a lot of things like that. That can become an obsession that's just as bad as drugs and alcohol. You know, just because it's healthy for the body doesn't mean that it's a good thing to do, if it is an obsession. You know, some people wind up with their addiction being TV, and they can't stop watching TV. They have to watch it all the time, or whatever the case is. And it's anything truthfully that separates you from God, that puts a distance between you and God, is something you need to remove from your life. And so don't just, you know, say, well, gee, you know, thank goodness I'm not like that guy who drank, or that guy who took dope. I don't do any of that. Well, if you examine your life, is there anything else that's separating you from God? So,
Yeah.
you know, so if it's costly, right? All those things, not just the smoking, but the drinking and everything. You know, and this is another thing. If you had all the money that you needed, let's say that you had won a lottery and you were a millionaire, where do you think you would be today?
Probably dead.
And because why?
Well, I just would have kept spiraling down and with no problems other than what I was doing, you know, no money problems or no accountability really. And I know I'm kind of self-destructive when you know, it just happens that way.
We're all self-destructive when we're not following God.
Yeah.
Because you know what, we think we're doing the best for ourselves, but we're often doing the very worst, because all we're trying to do is please ourselves. And by pleasing ourselves, we drive everybody away from us, and we destroy our bodies, because we're not even thinking about the Joe Flynn of 10 years from now. We're thinking of the Joe Flynn or the Tim Lane or the Danny Vanek of the moment.
Right.
And that's a dangerous place to be, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so now you got through the call of the wild. That's where you still hear the call of the alcoholic calling you back. How about now? You've been clean and sober since '93, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Ever miss it?
No.
Okay.
Not at all.
And so, although you're not really out there in front of the public, do you get a sense that you're in the ministry?
Yes.
Yeah, because you are.
Well, yeah, and I've been for a while, you know.
You know, one of the things that people don't realize too is, although Joe Flynn is at the mission from 11 o'clock at night till 7 in the morning, he's also out at the ranch, where he lives out at the ranch that we own. Now, when we have guys out there that are on our program that are winding up the end of their program, Joe is still going to be around in contact with them, where he has to talk to some of these guys, and sometimes they're going to need advice, aren't they?
Yeah.
And so, and by the way, I was asked, now I may be embarrassing you, because I know we're ticking down, but somebody wanted to ask me, or ask you, about the time you passed out at the pulpit.
Well, that's Jim Hughes out back.
Yeah, it might have been, yeah. So what?
That's the reason I got kicked out.
Oh, okay. Well, you know what,
I
Joe?
was being the night man, and it was, yeah.
Well, you know what, hey, Joe, I'd like to ask you one more question. We got just about 45 seconds and everything, but I wanted to know, have you found your life at the mission fulfilling?
Yes. I know I'm supposed to be here, and I
Good.
have no problem. I just love it
Hey, and will you come back again?
here. Maybe.
Oh, we'll get him back here again. I sign his paychecks.
That's true.
All right. Well, listen, we're coming up. We're bumping up against it. So, listen, if you're out there, we're with you. We'll pray for you. Until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. Thank you, Joe.
Sure. Okay.
That's
That's
It
good.
didn't hurt.
See you in another 10 years.
Hey, thanks, guys.
10 years.
10 years.
Water.
Agua.
Okay, well, that was good. See you tomorrow.
All right, buddy.
Okay.
Just fine.
Ministry of the Sacramento Union Council Mission in your heart's been touched.